Hello learners, I am Dr. Arunkumar, faculty member, School of Management, Sastra University. In this session, I am going to discuss about the research report and about oral presentation. Moving further, let's discuss about the learning objectives of this session. In this session, we will be describing the characteristics of well-written research report that is tailored to the needs of a specific audience, and also to understand how to write a thorough and complete research report. And also we will be describing the characteristics of a good oral presentation. So moving further, let us understand what is a research report and what is the key purpose of writing a research report. When you talk about a research report, is an oral presentation and or a written statement. If you look at the research report, whose purpose, the main purpose is to communicate research results. So, and through this, research results in business, there is a possibility and scope for strategic recommendations from these research findings, and as a business manager can make other conclusions to management or to other specific audiences. Okay, that's about the main aspect of a written research report. As I rightly mentioned, the key purpose of any research report is to offer a clear description of what has been done in the various stages of the research process, and it is important to identify the specific purpose of the report so that it can be tailored accordingly. We have a number of examples on research report, like simple descriptive report, comprehensive report, through which we are offering alternative solutions. Before looking into the preparation of a research report, let us first understand the characteristics of a well-written report. The first aspect is called clarity. Any report should have fundamental clarity. Or what is your understanding about clarity in research report? Clarity is a characteristics of speech or research report that communicates effectively with its intended audience. In general, the qualities of a clearly written research includes clearly, carefully defined purpose, logical organization, and also well-constructed sentences, and precise word choice without any technical jargons. So that's about the clarity of the report. So the reader, whenever they read the research report, they should get fundamental clarity on the substance what they are reading. Next one is let's talk about conciseness. So what is meant by conciseness in research report? Writers who write concisely choose the appropriate words and phrases and sentence patterns that clearly and efficiently support their meaning and purpose. Empty words, glitched phrases, and ungrammatical sentence patterns hide your meaning and distract from your purpose. So it is always to avoid these things whenever we go for a concise and well-written research report. And the next one is let's talk about the coherence. One of the characteristics of a well-written report is called coherence. A coherent research report explicitly states the purpose of the research, and also it contextualizes its importance. It uses appropriate research methods to explore and address each research question, such as such as a research paper uses relevant text sources to support the ideas, whatever discussed in the research report. Arguments must be fully developed and related to the research. So that's about the coherence here. And the next one is the research report, well-written research report should have the right to emphasize on important aspects which is related to the research questions and research objectives and aim of the study. So there should not be any deviation on that. The next important characteristics of a well-written report is that a meaningful organization of paragraphs and also, smooth transition from one topic to the next whenever you connect the, themes of your literature and the conceptual framework. So that is very, very important. And also you should use the apt choice of words, which should have research inclination, and it should give the reader a fundamental clarity. If you, when you talk about the specificity, okay, if you take that into consideration, your skill level of writing should be spot on for whomever is reading it. Also, considering your audience creates a greater possibility of readers that understand what you're writing and makes you a better writer. So the role of the audience plays a very important role, and your research should be very specific and very much focused on the research question and research objectives. And the next aspect of the characteristics of a well-written report is called the readability. So when you talk about readability, is a measure of how easy a piece of text is to read. The level of complexity of the text, its familiarity, legibility, and typography all feed into how readable your text is. Readability is a key factor in user experience. So this is one of the important characteristics of a well-written report. And next one is, let's talk about the comprehension of a well-written report. When we discuss about the meaning of comprehension, comprehension is nothing but the understanding and interpretation of what is read to be able to accurately understand written material. Researcher need to be able to decode what they read, make connections between what they read and what they already know, think deeply about what they have read. The audience and intention of the research paper is very, very important, and accordingly the readability component and comprehension component has to be delivered. And next one is, when you look at the tone of the written report, research report, the audience and the intention of research paper, the research report, decide the tone. If your research report is going to be printed in a scholarly or any reputed journals, articles, or very widely accepted publications, or reviewed by a college professor, your formal and succinct tone is best. Writing for more leisurely and laid-back audience call for a more casual and conversational tone. So accordingly, you have to prepare your tone, and it has to be reflected in your research report. So next one is, the final proof is very important as far as the research is concerned. What do you mean by the final proof? Once you completed and addressed all these characteristics, make sure your comprehensive research report is without any misspellings, incorrect or missed punctuations or inconsistency in any kind of textual and numerical sentences, editing, and also if you find any kind of error, then you have to go for editing process, which gives you scopes to correct the issues at the core of writing, like sentence constructions and language clarity. A thorough editing will help improve the readability, clarity, and tone of the text. So that's about the characteristics of the research, and if you address all these characteristics, I think you will come to arrive at a well-written research report. Dear learners, we move further to understand the important contents of a research report. Let's understand what is a research report again. Although every research report is custom made, for the project it represents, some conventions of research report format are universal. They represent a consensus about the parts necessary for a good research report and how they should be ordered. This consensus is not a law, however. Every book on report writing suggests the use of its own unique format, and every report writer has to pick and choose the section and order that will work best for the project at hand. Many companies and universities also have in-house report formats or writing guides for writers to follow. The format described in this session, I think, serves as a starting point from which writers can shape up their appropriate format. So it includes certain major elements like title page, executive summary. Okay, I can show you this one. Yeah, we can see this here, title page, letter of transmittal, letter of authorization, table of contents, which includes a list of figures and tables, executive summary, objectives, results, conclusions, recommendations, and the body of the research report, which includes introduction, background, objectives, methodology, results, limitations, conclusions, and recommendations. And you have an appendix section which has data collection forms, the questionnaire or the schedule which used to collect data, detailed calculations, if any, general tables, bibliography, and other supporting materials. So, the tailoring the format to the project. The format of your research report may to be adjusted for two reasons. One is to obtain a proper level of formality and to decrease the complexity of the report. This is very, very important. The format given here is for, for the purpose of your understanding, and it's very clearly depicted here. And, there are three components of research report parts. One is the preparatory parts, and the other one is the main body, and the last one, the appended body. The preparatory body consists of title page, letter of transmittal, letter of authorization, and a table of contents. And also it involves the summary, objective, results, conclusions, and recommendations. The main body consists of the introduction, the research methodology, and the results, and also the limitations, conclusions, and recommendations. The appended part has the data collection forms, detailed calculations, general tables, bibliography, all that. So this has to be given due care so that we can very well write a well articulated research report. Moving further, whenever you are adapting a report format to required formality, you can see this diminishing need for formality. Okay. Title fly page, title page, letter of transmittal, letter of authorization, table of contents, summary, report body, appendix. And now you look at this title page, letter of transmittal, table of content, summary, report body, and appendix. Title page, table of content, summary, report body, appendix, and further, it has get narrowed down. Title page, table of content, report body, and appendix, and finally title page, report body, and finally report body and summary. That's it. So this is the diminishing need for formality. And it depends upon the situation where you present your written report. So let's move further to this is a basic format of a business research report. A business research report will have an abstract, and it should have an introduction. An introduction component, we have the background of the study, because any researcher, when you want to understand the issue pertaining to the problem area, you need to review your literature extensively to get cited information to support your background of your research. And once you identify the problem and the associated factors which is relevant to the background of the problem, if you address that issues, definitely you'll get findings for your study. So in background, you need to really have to support with authenticated cited information. That's very much essential here. And also, you should have an extensive literature review support by looking at the magazine, journal information, article information, textbook information, and various sales reports, interviews. All that can be cited, and these can be cited with APA format, which is called American Psychological Format. And after you identify the problem, you need to come out with preparation of the problem statement. A problem statement will comprises of the research question and research objectives, and also along with that you need to deliberate the scope of the study, need for the study, and the limitation of the study, all that. And also, and sometimes you don't want to highlight the limitations here, you can take to the discussion part of your limitations. And definitely from that you develop proposition or hypothesis. So once you are clear about your hypothesis, when you address when you prove or disprove the hypothesis, definitely you get a solution for your problem. So problem statement is articulation of problem statement is very, very important in research because a problem well defined has the clear solution. So you need to be very thorough about your review process, then only you can able to address the problem statement. So next one is the research methods. Who is the population of your study? What sampling methods are you're going to be using, whether it is probability sampling or non-probability sampling, what kind of sampling technique, like it's simple random, stratified random, or whether it is non-probability sampling like convenience sampling or judgment sampling, like that. You need to very clearly specify your appropriate sampling techniques, and the preparation of your instrument, research instrument, validating your research instrument, doing pilot study before you conduct your extensive research, and fine-tuning your research instrument using reliability analysis and using many more validity tests available, like phase validity, content validity, and concurrent validity, discriminant validity, to validate your research instrument. And also you need to use excuse me, use the appropriate statistical tools to analyze the collected data, like a chi-square or analysis of variance or factor analysis, multiple regression analysis, like that. There are many statistical tools are available to give the appropriate statistical findings, and any report has to be precisely supported with the statistical support. That's very important. And also finally you have to present the results. That's what we are going to discuss in this session, about how to do a clear presentation of your report. And your discussion should support the earlier researchers' findings, or is there any deviation from that? There should be proper justification through proper citations, and also the implications, how the beneficiary, I mean the corporate, the society is going to benefit out of your research, and what are the limitations involved while doing your research in terms of time constraint, resource constraint, and any other bottleneck which really stops you in pursuing your research, and how do you overcome that? And also, what are the areas you are not addressed, and that paves way to the future researcher. Am I right? So once you completed this discussion part, and this discussion part has to be very, very clear about some kind of supportive evidences should be cited, because earlier researcher work claims has to be justified here. And what is the relationship between your findings and their findings? All that has to be well, described in your discussion section. And also, finally, you conclude your research, what kind of solutions you are trying to provide with your problem, and also whatever the references from newspaper, articles, magazines, research reports, and many more reports. You have to do citations. Normally, the business research report follow the American Psychological Universal Citation format, and also the instrument and all kind of supporting documents can be enclosed in the appendix section. Okay, so these are the basic elements has to be provided when you go for the preparation of business research report. So now let us also go in detail about the the elements of a research report. First, to start with the makeup or arrangement part necessary to a good research report. So the guidelines that call for for each element of the research report also dictate the content of each part. So first, to start with the title page. When you talk about the title page, should state the title of the report, for whom the report was prepared, by whom it was prepared, and the date of release or presentation. The title gives a brief but complete indication of the purpose of the research project, and the title addresses and titles of the preparer and recipient may also be included on confidential reports. The title page may list the people to whom the report should be circulated. For most formal reports, the title page is preceded by the title fly page, which contains only the report title. The next one, the element here is the letter of transmittal. Relatively formal and very formal reports include a letter of transmittal. Its purpose is to release or deliver the report to the recipient. It also serves to establish some rapport between the reader and the writer. This is one part of the formal report in which a personal or even slightly informal tone should be used. The transmittal, should not, dive into the report findings except in the broadest terms. Okay. And also note that the opening paragraph releases the report and briefly identifies the factors of authorization. The letter comments generally on findings and matters of interest regarding the research. The closing section expressed the writer's personal interest in the project just completed and in doing additional related work. The next element here is the letter of authorization. The letter of authorization is a letter to the researcher that approves the project. The details of who has the responsibility for it and describes the resources available to support it, because the researcher would not write this letter personally. Writing guidelines will not be discussed here. In many situations, simply referring to the authorization in the letter of transmittal is sufficient. If so, the letter of authorization need not be included in the report. In some cases, though the reader may be unfamiliar with the authorization or may need detailed information about it, in such cases, the report should include this letter, preferably an exact copy of the original. The next element is the table of content. A table of content is essential to any report more than a few pages long. It should list the divisions and subdivisions of the report with page references. The table of content is based on the final outline of the report, but it should include only the first level subdivisions. For short report, it is sufficient to include only the main divisions. If the report includes many figures or tables, a list of these should be immediately follow the table of contents. Okay, so this is very important. And moving further, the executive summary. The summary, also known as executive summary, briefly explains why the research project was conducted, what aspects of the problem were considered, and what outcome was and what should be done. It is a vital part of the report. Studies have indicated that nearly all managers read a report summary, while only a minority read the rest of the report. Thus, the writer only chance to produce an impact be in the summary. And so the summary should be written only after the rest of the reports has been completed. It represents the essence of the report. It should be 1 page long, or at most maximum 2 pages. So the writer must carefully sort out what is important enough to be included in it. Several pages of the full report may have to be considered into one summarizing sentences. Some parts of the report may be condensed more than others. The number of words in the summary need not be in proportion to the length of the section being discussed. The summary should be written to self-sufficient. In fact, the summary is often detached from the report and circulated by itself. And also, some more information I would like to give you. The summary contains 4 elements. First it states the objectives of the report, including the most important background information and the specific purpose of the project. Second, it presents the methodology and major results. Finally, the conclusions of the report are presented. These are opinions based on the results and constitute an interpretations of the results. Finally, come recommendations or suggestions for action based on the conclusion. Okay, everything is based on the conclusion. In many cases, managers prefer not to have recommendations included in the report or summary, whether or not recommendations are to be included should be clear from particular context of the report. An additional element that can be included in the summary, if you go further, is short justifications for the research study and report itself. As seen in the research, in many of the research report, you can Google it. The use of many kind of samples you can explore, and you can try to learn on your own in preparation of this research summary. Next one is let's talk about the body of the research report. Okay, the body constitutes the bulk of the reports. It begins with an introduction section, setting out the background factors that made the project necessary, as well as the objectives of the report. I think I can, okay, this I think this one will give you a clear picture. So, it constitutes with the discussions of the methodology, results, and limitations of the study, and finishes with the conclusions and recommendations based on the results. Um, you know, that's the this is very important as far as the research, the research report is concerned. And the introduction explains why the project was done and what it aimed to discover. It should include the basic authorization and submitted data. The relevant background comes next. Background information is important and may require that you gather additional external data. Is very important. Enough background should be included to explain why the project was worth doing, but unessential historical factors should be omitted. The question of how much is enough should be answered by referring to the needs of the audience. A government report that will be widely circulated requires more background than a company's company's internal report on maybe on customer satisfaction. And the last part of the introduction explain exactly what the project tried to discover. It discussed the statement of the problem and research question as they were stated in the research proposal. Each purpose presented here should be have a corresponding entry in the results section later in the report. The second part of the body is the research methodology section, and this part is the challenge to the writer, because it must as I was telling you, the second part of the body is the research methodology. This gives a great challenge to the writer because of the fact that it must explain, a technical procedure in a manner appropriate for the audience. The material in this section may be supplemented with more detailed explanations in the appendix or glossary of technical terms. This part of the report should address, 4 topics. Okay, so that is, the first one is the the research design. Okay, this is the one. Yeah, this is very important. So the first one is the research design. We What is the research design is all about? Was the study exploratory or descriptive or causal? You need to explain in the research design. Did the data come from primary or secondary sources? You need to address that. Were results collected by survey or observation or experiment? You need to address that. A copy of the survey questionnaire or observation form should be included in the appendix. Uh, why was this particular design suited to this study? You need to give a justification. And next one is the sampling design. What was the target population? What sampling frame was used? What sample units were used and how were they selected? How large was the sample? What was the response rate? Detailed computation to support these explanations should be saved for the appendix. And also data collection and field work is one of the component of this research methodology section. In that data collection and fieldwork section, you need to talk about how many and what type of fieldwork were used, what training and supervision did they receive in order to do the fieldwork, and was the work verified. And this section is very, very important for establishing the degree of accuracy of the results. And finally, you go for analysis. This section should outline the general statistical method I was mentioning about, whether it is chi-square or analysis of variance. Is it multiple regression or factor analysis or correlation analysis? What relevant and appropriate statistical method used in the study? You need to define that, and why you use that. You have to give explanation. But the information presented here should not overlap with what is presented in the results section. And finally, the results section. When you look at the results section, the research section should make up the bulk of the report and should present in some logical order those findings of the project that bear on the objectives. The results should be organized as a continuous narrative designed to be convincing but not to oversell the project. Summary tables and charts should be used to aid the discussion. These may serve as points of references to the data being discussed and free the prose from excessive facts and figures. Comprehensive or detailed charts, however, should be saved for the appendix because no research is perfect. Its limitations should be indicated. If problems arose with a non-response error or sampling procedure, these should be discussed very clearly. However, the discussion of the limitations should avoid overemphasizing the weaknesses. Its aim should be to provide a realistic basis for assessing the results. So that is very, very important. And I said earlier, the last part of the body is the conclusions and recommendations. Okay, as mentioned earlier, the conclusions and recommendation section, as mentioned earlier, conclusions or opinions are based on the results, and recommendations or suggestions for action. The conclusion and recommendation should be presented in this section in more detail than in the summary, and the text should include justification as needed. And when you talk about the appendix section, And the appendix presents the, whatever the materials, any important materials that is too technical or too detailed to go in the body should appear in the appendix. This includes materials of interest only to some readers or subsidiary materials not directly detailed, not having detailed calculations. Discussions of highly technical questions, detailed or comprehensive tables of results, and also bibliography if appropriate. As I said, you can use APA format. Since the advent of the company intranet, much appendix material is posted on internet web pages. So hope I have clearly given you an overview about how to prepare the research report. What is the format available to presenting your research findings, the makeup or arrangements of the parts necessary to go to research report. So that's about how to prepare an effective research report. So the effective use of graphic aids. So we just now discussed about the contents of the research report, how to do the presentation, all that, and the one of the important element is that whenever your presentation is want to be very appealing, you need to use the effective use of graphic aids. So it's nothing but the usage of graphic aids can clarify complex points or emphasize a message. Used improperly or sloppily, they can distract, even mislead a reader. Graphic aids, aids work best, when they are an integral part of the text. The graphic should always be interpreted in the text. This does not mean that the writer should, exhaustively explain an obvious chart or table, but it does mean that the text should point out the key elements of any graphic aid and relate them to the discussion in progress. So now let's look into detail how the pictures or diagrams used to clarify complex points or emphasize a message through my inputs. Okay, so moving further, if you see how beautifully this table has been presented here, this table is whenever you take output using SPSS or any output, you will get just a report, but that has to be properly presented, meaningfully presented, and it should be easily understandable by the receivers. That's very, very important whenever you do a presentation. So in that context, there are several types of graphic aids may be useful in research reports, including as I was mentioning, tables, charts, maps, and diagrams. This session briefly covers the most common ones. I mean the tables and charts. The reader interested in other types of graphic material should consult more specialized sources. Now let me explain you how to do a present a table here. Tables are most useful, you all know, for presenting numerical information. You can see this table, how beautifully it has got presented, especially when several pieces of information have been gathered about each item discussed. For example, consider how hard it might be to follow the information with only narrative text. I think it is not appealing at all, and no graphical aids. Without that, I think you are not doing justification to your report. Using tables allows a writer to point out significant features without getting bogged down in detail. The body of the report should include only relatively short summary tables with comprehensive tables reserved for an appendix. Okay, so if you look at this table, this allows for simple reference from the text to the table. If the text includes many tables, a list of tables should be included just after the table of contents. And in title, the title should indicate the contents of the table and be completed enough to be intelligibly without referring to the text. Subheads and banner heads. The subheads contain the captions for the rows of the table, and the banner heads contain those for the columns. And when you talk about the footnotes, any explanations or qualification for particular table entries or sections should be given in footnotes. Okay, you can see here the footnotes are given here. Source note. If a table is based on material from one or more secondary sources rather than on a new data generated by the projects, the sources should be acknowledged. Usually, if without acknowledgement, it is a kind of plagiarism. Okay, so tables in a survey research report typically follow the format shown. I think you can see the format here, this is an example of cross tabulation. The demographics with survey response. You can see here that is been given very beautifully depicted here. So I was mentioning about the table number should be there for a table, title should be there for the table, subheads and banner heads should be there for the table, footnotes should be there, and source notes should be there for the table. Next one is, you can see the cross tabulation done for a table here. I think you can very well you can see the age group versus the online activity. These are the two parameters has been compared, and it was clearly presented through the table form. This is a great example. Okay, you can see here like this. You're supposed to present your data while doing your presentation. And next one is let's talk. Suppose an airline asks a question about customer satisfaction with its baggage handling service. In addition to showing a simple frequency for each category, most research analysis would cross-tabulate answers to the baggage handling questions with several demographics, variables such as gender, income, education, and age to present multiple cross-tabulations individually in separate table requires considerable space. Thus, many research reports use a space-saving format with either subheads for rows or banner heads for columns to allow the reader to view several cross-tabulations at the same time. So this, I think this one is a great example. You can see the subhead format to include several cross tabulation in one table. Okay, the age and the different demographics has been presented here, and also it has been compared with the other demographic characteristics of the respondents. Okay, moving further, let's understand charts. Actually, if you look at charts translate numerical information into visual form so that relationship may be easily grasped. The you know the accuracy of the numbers is reduced to gain this advantage. Each chart should include the following elements. You can see here. One is the figure number. The chart should be numbered in a separate series from tables. The numbers allow for easy reference from the text. If there are many charts, a list of them should be included after the table of contents. And also, if you look at the title should describe the contents of the chart and be independent of the text explanation. The number and the title may be placed at the top or the bottom of the chart. The next one is the explanatory legends. Enough explanation should be put on the chart to spare the reader a need to look at the accompanying text. Such explanations should include labels for axes, scale numbers, and a key to the various quantities being graphed. And also the source and footnotes. Any secondary sources for the data should be acknowledged. Footnotes may be used to explain items. Also, they are less common for charts than for tables. So you can see the charts. You can take the example, a simple pie chart with slices representing the frequency of sales at each price level. Okay, so this is a great example. You should look into it, how to depict a chart. If you look at the charts are subject to distortion, whether unintentional or deliberate. So whenever you alter the scale changes the reader impression of the data. A particularly severe kind of distortion comes from treating unequal intervals as if they were equal. This generally results from a deliberate attempt to distort data. And you can see this exhibit, which shows someone has attempted to make the rise on the chart more dramatic by compression of the portion in which the data showed little and not change. So basically I advocate you just go for a simple pie chart in your presentation, or you can go for a pie chart with more variables that can be done. So this is a great example here. So one of the most useful kinds of charts is the pie chart, which shows the composition of some total quantity at a particular time. You can see here on the each angle or slice is proportional to its percentage of the whole. Companies often use pie charts to show how revenue were used or the composition of the sales. You can see here in this chart. Each of the segments should be labeled with its description and percentage. The research reporter should not try to include too many small slices, which will be, literally clumsy. About 6 slices is a typical maximum. I can say that. I honestly, go for. I will not go more than that. Maybe maximum 6 slices. And when you look at the, you can also see this, how beautifully this pie chart has been presented here. And moving further, let's talk about the line graphs. Now, when you talk about line graphs, are useful for showing the relationship of one variable to another. The dependent variable generally is shown on the vertical axis and the independent variable on the horizontal axis. The most common independent variable for such charts is time, but it is by no means the only one. And so I can show you some examples of line graphs. Yeah, simple line graph. You can see here the two variables are taken, spending on prescription drugs. In one axis it is taken year, the other axis is taken billions of dollars. You can see this, how beautifully it got presented in this simple line graph. Variations of the line graph also are useful. The multi-line graph, when you look at this, you can see the multi-line graph. The multi-line graph shows the relationship of more than one, independent variable, dependent variable with that of the independent variable. The line for each dependent variable should be in a different color or pattern and should be clearly labeled. That's very important. Okay, the writer should not try to squeeze in too many variables. That is not, it will not look nice basically. This can quickly lead to confusion rather than clarification. So that's about the multiple line graph. Next, moving further, let's talk about the bar chart. Okay, so what is this bar chart is all about? The bar chart shows changes in the value of the dependent variable. You can see that it is plotted on the vertical axis at discrete intervals of the independent variable. On the horizontal axis, okay, dependent variable is plotted on the vertical axis, and independent variable is plotted on the horizontal axis, and it's very clearly depicted here. So this is a simple bar chart which I have shown you here. Like this, you can also do your presentation in your research report. Okay, like the line graph, the bar chart format has variations. I can talk about this one, subdivided bar chart. A common variant is the subdivided bar chart. It is much like a stratum chart, showing the composition of the whole quantity. The multiple bar chart, shows how multiple variables are related to the primary variable. In each of these cases, each bar or segment of the bar needs to be clearly identified with a different color or pattern. The research reporter should not use too many divisions or dependent variables. Too much detail obscures the essential advantage of charts, is to make a relationship easy to grasp. Okay, and I was showing you the multiple bar chart. When you talk about the the multiple bar chart, so it is a good one. You can see this here. The multiple bar chart shows how multiple variables are related to the primary variable. In each of these cases, each bar or segment of the bar needs to be clearly identified with a different color or pattern. The writer should not use too many divisions or dependent variable. Too much detail obscures the essential advantage of the charts, and which is to make a relationship easy to grasp. So hope you guys will use this format for your research report presentation. And finally we'll also discuss about the oral presentation. See, the conclusion and recommendation of the most research reports are presented orally as well as in writing. The purpose of an oral presentation is to highlight the most important findings of a research report and provide clients or line managers with an opportunity to ask questions. The oral presentation may be as simple as a short video conference with the manager at the client organization's locations, or as a formal as a report to the company board of directors. In either situation, the key to effective presentation is preparation. I tell you, I'm sharing my experience. So that's very, very important whenever you do a communication. Communication specialist often suggests that a person preparing an oral presentation begin at the end. In other words, while preparing a presentation, the researcher should think about what he or she wants the client to know when it has been completed. The researcher should select the three or most important findings for emphasis and rely on the written report for a full summary. The researcher also needs to be ready to defend the results of the research, because people may pose question. This is not the same as being defensive. Instead, the researcher should be prepared to deal in a confident, competent manner with the questions that arise. Remember that even the most reliable and valid research project is worthless if manager who must act on its results are not convinced of its importance. As with written reports, a key to effective oral presentation is adapting to the audience. Delivering an hour-long formal speech when a 10 minutes discussion is called for will reflect poorly on both the presenter and the reporter. Am I right? Most of you have witnessed that. Lecturing or reading to the audience is sure to impede communication at any level of formality. I'm sure about it. Presenters should often, especially, as being a management students like you, the presenter should refrain from reading prepared text word for word. By relying on a brief notes, familiarity with the subject, and as much rehearsal as the occasion calls for, presenters will foster better communication. Presenter, should, in my experience, avoid research jargon, and use short, familiar words. So presenters should, maintain eye contact. That's very important with the audience and repeat the main points, because the audience cannot go back and replay what the speaker has said. An oral presentation is often organized around a standard format. Tell them what you are going to tell them. That's very important. And tell them what you just told them. That's very important. Okay. So the graphic and the visual aids can be useful in an oral presentation as in written one. Presenter can choose from variety of media, slides, overhead projectors, and on-screen computer-generated graphics are useful for larger audience. For smaller audience, the researcher may put the visual aids on posters or flip charts. Another possibility is to make copies of the chart for each participant. That's better, possibly as a supplement to one of the other forms of presentation. Whatever medium is chosen, each visual aid should be designed to convey a simple attention-getting message that supports a point on which the audience should focus its thinking, as they do in written presentation. Presenter should interpret the graphics for the audience. The best slide are easy to read and interpret. Large typeface, multiple colors, bullets that highlight, and other artistic device can enhance the readability of charts And also, this is very important. Using gestures during presentation also help convey the message and make presentation more interesting. So, so here I have highlighted some of the tips given here. Open up your arms to embrace your audience. Keep your arms between your waist and shoulders. Drop your arms to your sides when not using them. Avoid quick and jerky gestures which make you appear nervous. Hold gestures longer than you would in normal conversation. Vary gestures, switch from hand to hand, and other times use both hands or no hands. Don't overuse gestures. Some gestures are used to draw attentions to the points illustrated by visual aids. So that's about my inputs on gesture. Okay. So to summarize, slides are often helpful. Images, photos, graphs, infographics may also helpful you to sustain the interest of your audience. Think about dress, mannerism, gesture, and the most important thing, which I have not said, that is voice modulation, crest and trough. Whenever when you're serious and you want to emphasize something, you have to increase your voice. That gives you a great impression, and also it projects your confidence, and which one you want to emphasize. You have to modulate. That's a mere practice. You can develop that. Your voice modulation, speak audibly, clearly, without distracting mannerism, and at the right speed. Don't like a bullet trying to go fast. Be slow and steady, and make sure you reach the audience who are attending your presentation, and they should get that's the ultimate outcome. They should have fundamental clarity, and they should get convinced about your presentation. Establish, as I said earlier, eye contact, varying the length of the sentence, varying your tone of voice, and also the rate of flow of information. Don't be too fast. Rehearse. Keep rehearsing until you feel, comfortable about your presentation. Okay. So that's all about the research report, the written report, content, and how to do your visual aid presentation and your oral presentation. And I think I honestly given you a comprehensive picture about what is required for an effective presentation in terms of written as well as in terms of oral presentation. Hope all of you enjoyed my session. Thank you so much. Have a good day.